Hi everyone, welcome back to English for You. I'm Pat.
And I'm Mike.
So we're on part 2 of our TOEIC article. We're looking at the kind of English you'd see in the real world. And yesterday we were with the Oakland News Hour during a show, a broadcast, a news report. And we found that Tony, the anchor, is retiring from the Oakland News Hour.
That's right. He's been the anchor. He's been sort of the host of the local news, or at least worked for the station for 30 years. And now he was going to retire, as people do when they get in their 60s or something like that. He's going to take a holiday with his wife, play some golf, read all those books he hasn't had the chance to read and that kind of stuff. But now we're going to be taking a look at his last news broadcast.
Well, we saw on that broadcast that Deb said farewell to him on air. It was kind of sad. It was emotional for Tony as he had to say goodbye to the crew and say thank you to the viewers, that kind of thing. He gave some thoughts on his career, that sort of stuff. And it's his career that we're going to focus a bit more on today.
Oh, okay.
We're actually going to read a local news report about Tony, his career, that kind of thing. So this has been written by another reporter, another journalist, maybe with the Oakland news team or maybe elsewhere in the city. But since he's been there on this show for 30 years, he's kind of an important local personality.
True.
So if he's retiring, you kind of want to mark that with a special article. It's a good piece of local news. So let's see what they write about him.
Reading.
Tony Partridge says farewell to viewers. Respected news anchor Tony Partridge signed off the Oakland News Hour for his final broadcast last night. Partridge has had a long career in the news industry and has been in the business for over 40 years. Upon graduating from the Brighton School of Journalism, Partridge got his first job writing for a local newspaper. Later, he was a radio reporter and then moved into TV, covering politics for the Oakland News Hour. Partridge was then promoted to the anchor's chair, where he's been a familiar face for the past 2 decades. When asked how he feels about retiring, Partridge is sentimental. This TV station was my home for 30 years, he said. In the beginning, I made plenty of mistakes, but the older journalists showed me the ropes. I'll never forget what they taught me. While Partridge will miss his colleagues, there are some things he won't regret leaving behind. My eyes are getting worse, and it was becoming difficult to read the teleprompter. He mentioned one serious mistake when he referred to Mayor Davis as Major Davis. The mayor called him the next day to thank him for the military promotion. Tony Partridge will be missed, and he will forever be an unforgettable Oakland personality.
Okay, so we know who Tony Partridge is. He's this news anchor for a local station in Oakland who's retiring. So let's find out more about him by reading this news story that was probably in a local newspaper or maybe on a local news website about Tony, who everyone in that town knows from the TV news. It says, respected news anchor Tony Partridge signed off the Oakland News Hour for his final broadcast last night. So this is basically the story we would be reading the next day about the evening news from last night, which was Tony's last one. He signed off last night. When you sign off, this phrasal verb basically means you're kind of closing, you're ending something, you're bringing something to an end, you're wrapping things up. And this is actually a phrase that many reporters or many hosts of television shows or radio shows might say, just to kind of show or signal that, well, that's it, that's all the time we have, we're going to sign off. They're saying goodbye. They might tell you about the next show coming up tomorrow or next week, thanking you for watching or listening. It's that whole basically short goodbye speech and information they say at the end of a broadcast.
Yeah, you could sign off from a letter as well, and maybe this is where the phrase comes from, because at the end of a letter you sign your name and that's basically the last thing you write. So to sign off from a letter, you might, yours sincerely, looking forward to talking to you soon, and that's the end of it. So we know that he's had his final broadcast, but what was he doing before that? The article says, Partridge has had a long career in the news industry and has been in the business for over 40 years. So we talked about the meaning of career yesterday. So his career, he's been 30 years on the station, but for 10 years before that, he was doing other stuff in the business. Here, the business means the news industry, the news business, the occupation of finding out news and reporting it to the public.
All right, so let's go back to how he got into the news business way back in time. It says, upon graduating from the Brighton School of Journalism, so we know where he went to university or, journalism school. Then it says Partridge got his first job writing for a local newspaper. All right, well, that kind of makes sense. He went to school to learn how to be a journalist, a reporter, and then, of course, he didn't become the top anchor on a local TV news station right away. No, after he graduated, he went to a local newspaper and probably wrote very boring stories about local events for a few years before he moved on with his career. But of course, before you begin your career, you do generally graduate from some kind of school. To graduate, this verb basically means to successfully complete your studies, all right? To finish your degree, to take all the exams, to get all the right grades, and basically to get that piece of paper, that certificate, that graduation certificate or diploma that says you've successfully completed. Now you can go off and study more, get a job, do something else with your life. But you successfully completed all the studies and tests and exams at a school. You can go now. For example, Walter graduated from the same university as his parents did. Many years apart, but they went to the same university and successfully finished their studies there. He graduated in journalism.
Yeah, journalism was his area of study, and this is the industry and activity of reporting the news and current events around the world. So journalism is the business area. If you are working in this field, you will be a journalist. A journal is almost like a diary. It's like things that happened every day. So that's where the word comes from. People used to, hundreds of years ago, just write down everything that was happening and everything they heard. And hundreds of years later, people read that and go, oh, this was the news then. So that word journal became journalist and journalism. So journalist is the person, journalism is the subject. So that's what he studied, how to report the news, how to do it right, how to be a good reporter, and so on.
Later, he was a radio reporter and then moved into TV, covering politics for the Oakland News Hour. So there you go. He went from a newspaper to a radio station and then to TV. He was a journalist. He was a reporter. It's kind of the same job, but the main difference is for journalists, you do most of your reporting with a pen and paper. You write things. You get published in newspapers and magazines and on websites possibly. If you're a reporter, you might have a microphone and you're speaking the news and giving the information through radio, television, through internet videos or something like that. But basically a TV reporter or a newspaper journalist, they're doing the same job. They're just giving you the news in a different kind of way. And yeah, one of the things that he reported on, he was a journalist concerning himself or focused on politics, because that's a big part of the news, because politics is presidents, it's mayors, it's the government, it's your taxes, it's laws, it's regulations, it's the kind of thing that politicians talk about in the Li Fa Yuan or the Congress or the Senate, or the president talks about this stuff, and it affects all of our lives. When we vote in elections, we are taking part in the politics of our city or country. So if we're talking about laws, presidents, mayors, legislators, things like that, we're talking about politics. For example, many Taiwanese parents don't like their children talking about politics. They would say it's not something teenagers should worry about.
I have to disagree with those parents. Kids should learn about politics because before long they'll be voting. They'll need to understand who for and why. Anyway, that's a completely different subject. Here we're talking about Tony Partridge and his career. So he was a reporter for a newspaper, then radio. Then he started being on TV, hosting the politics bit and reporting on that. We then see Partridge was then promoted to the anchor's chair, where he's been a familiar face for the past 2 decades. So the anchor's chair, this means he not only sat on the chair, but he got that job. That's what that phrase means. And promoted means he got to a more important role with a bigger salary and more responsibility. So yeah, the anchor would be the main guy for a news program. So it is a promotion. That's pretty much the top job you can get unless you become like the studio boss or something like that.
That's right. Now, back in the article, it says next, when asked how he feels about retiring, Partridge is sentimental. Okay, so we're getting the feeling this is what the reporter learned from, asking him a few questions. There's probably a bit of an interview coming up that they did with him as he was leaving, and they got the feeling, the way he was speaking, the way he was telling his story and all his memories of working at the station, that he was feeling quite sentimental. When you're sentimental, you're feeling emotional, you're feeling strong feelings or emotions, probably a little bit of a mixture, some sadness, definitely, but also some happiness. We often think of being sentimental when we look back at the past, at the good times we had years ago in school when we were young and innocent and every day was fun and we were with our friends all the time. And, sometimes we ignore the bad things that might have bothered us in the past, and we only pick out the nice, sweet, fond or happy memories that we have from the past. But it's that feeling of looking back on the past with some happiness for what happened and also some sadness that time's gone. We're not young anymore.
Exactly. And there's kind of an example of how Tony feels in this next sentence. This TV station was my home for 30 years, he said. So it wasn't just a place he worked, it was home. It was where the people who felt like family were.
Yeah. Getting a little sentimental for
Absolutely.
Tony. Absolutely. So it was a place he went and he celebrated happy days, birthdays with these people. They were like family. In the beginning, he says, I made plenty of mistakes.
Who doesn't?
But the older journalist showed me the ropes. All right. So he's basically saying, I learned a lot from working here as a young reporter. He made mistakes. Most people do make mistakes when they begin their job, for sure. And the older journalists, though, he says, showed him the ropes. Well, that was nice of them. And yeah, this idiom, show somebody the ropes, it basically means to show someone how to do a job or how something works. It's a phrase you might say or you might hear when it is your first day at a job and a senior staff member is basically there. All right, come with me. I'll show you what you need to do. I'll show you how your job works, how the system works, who to talk to, where to eat your lunch, all that kind of stuff. It actually comes to us from the world of sailing. If you were a new sailor on a boat, one of the old sailors would show you the ropes. Pull this one to do that. Don't pull that one, but only pull that one during a storm, because the ropes would, of course, control the sails and how the boat would work. So basically, they'd show you how the boat works. Today, we're using it to show you how the job works, how to do your job. I'm going to show you the ropes.
Okay, so yeah, the journalist helped him, as all senior employees should do to young employees.
Sure.
Show them what to do. And Tony adds, I'll never forget what they taught me. Of course, here, what is a pronoun meaning the things that. So I'll never forget all their good advice, is what he's saying.
All right, so those are some quotes from the actual interview with this man. Now we get back to the story, and the writer writes, while Partridge will miss his colleagues, there are some things he won't regret leaving behind. So we're getting a different side of his working life. Of course, he loved working there, he loved the people he worked with, but there were some things, some parts of his job that he won't regret leaving behind. He'll be happy that he doesn't have to do this, waking up early, that kind of thing, something you might not enjoy. But he certainly enjoyed being with his colleagues. We learned that, and his colleagues are his coworkers. That's basically what a colleague is. It's someone who works at the same place with you, or maybe someone in the same job. A doctor at one hospital might call a doctor at another hospital his colleague. Maybe they work in the same field, but basically there's a relationship through your working life with this person. They are a colleague. For example, Barry often goes fishing with his colleagues on the weekend. So the other businessmen or whatever he works with, they go fishing on the weekends.
So yeah, Tony misses those colleagues.
He will, yes.
He's going to say, oh, the people I worked with, they were great. It was fun. However, there are other things he won't regret leaving behind. To regret something means to feel bad about something you did, or to wish you didn't have something, to kind of just feel like, bad about the past. This is going to be bad in the new time, something that I don't like to look back on. In this case, of course, Tony's saying he doesn't regret leaving them.
Right.
He's happy they're in the past. He's happy he doesn't have to do these things. There will be no regrets like, oh, I should have stayed at the job. What was I doing? He won't feel that way about these certain things. Here's another sentence using regret. After he got sick, Jerry regretted that he didn't listen to the doctor's advice. The doctor said, stop eating so much meat. Jerry didn't listen, and now he's got heart problems from eating too much meat. He should have listened to the doctor. He didn't, so he regrets it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But what does Tony regret?
Well, he says, my eyes are getting worse, and it was becoming difficult to read the teleprompter. So here he's talking about some of the things he's not going to miss
having
from
to do
the
that.
job, and, going to the job and working, and the people were great, but his eyes weren't so good anymore. He's an older man. He had to wear, special glasses or, squint like this, make his eyes really small. So he can read what it says for him to say on TV, read that stuff off of the teleprompter. What is a teleprompter?
Right there.
It's that. It's the thing that we're looking at.
Yeah.
We have a teleprompter here, and it basically puts the words from the article on a little screen or on a mirror in front of the camera. So that's what we're reading off of. They use this in a lot of television shows and even probably in movies and other things like that. But basically so someone can look at the camera and read without kind of having to look over on one side. They have this special machine called the teleprompter. And yes, news anchors will often, they're not actually reading off those papers. Those are just fake.
There might be a note saying like this is the next story or a little thing like that.
Or it might say what the teleprompter should say if it breaks.
That's true. It's a backup. Okay. So, of course, there are other things that Tony doesn't regret leaving as well. And if you make a mistake on air, that can often be quite amusing or serious depending on what it is.
Right.
And we see in the article he mentioned one serious mistake when he referred to Mayor Davis as Major Davis. Just one letter there, maybe he read it wrong on the teleprompter, but it certainly does have a different meaning.
Certainly if you were interviewing the mayor, it would be very embarrassing.
So Tony's mistake was to refer to the mayor as a major. When you refer to a person, you're either talking about them or sometimes talking to them. You're bringing up this particular subject as to introduce it or to mention it, often being related to the other things you're talking about. And sometimes it can be used to give somebody a name. My full name is Patrick, but I never use it, and nobody would really refer to me as Patrick. They'd say Pat. That's how people refer to me if they're talking about me to other people. Here's another example of this sort of thing. Basketball fans sometimes refer to LeBron James as King James or simply LeBron. King James is a good nickname for him. And of course, there's only one LeBron. If you say LeBron, people aren't like, LeBron who? They know you mean LeBron James. So you can refer to him as LeBron. It's easy and everybody knows who you mean. So yeah, instead of saying Mayor Davis, he said Major Davis.
That could be a little bit embarrassing. And it says the mayor called him the next day to thank him for the military promotion. Oh, that made it even more embarrassing. So he got this confused. The mayor, of course, is the head of the city. A major is a rank in the army, like a colonel or a captain or something like that.
Quite a high-ranking officer.
So calling a mayor who's, a politician, a major who's in the army or something, that's a very strange thing to get confused. But to make it even worse, it says the mayor, the real mayor, called him the next day after hearing this on the news and said, "Thank you for the military promotion. I've never been in the army, Tony, but yesterday you said I was a major. I salute you as an army major." Of course, he's not. He's the mayor. A little mistake, not a terrible mistake.
Yeah, but bit of fun to be had with it.
If the mayor makes fun of you, that makes it a little more painful.
Okay, so this report about Tony continues, and it's starting to wrap up now with some kind words. Tony Partridge will be missed. So it means, it'll be a shame he's not on the TV anymore. And it also says, and he will forever be an unforgettable Oakland personality. So here the word personality means kind of a person, and usually an interesting person. And we say Tony was an unforgettable personality. If you're unforgettable, you're someone or something that is not easily forgotten. Its qualities, either good ones or bad ones, keep it in your memory for a long time. You could have an unforgettable vacation, one that you'll always remember and you'll love to talk about and think about, and so on. Here's another good example of that. Paula and her husband had an unforgettable dinner in an undersea restaurant last year. So they were under the sea in a big glass room looking at the fish, eating a lovely dinner. Of course, you're going to remember that for a long time, so it's unforgettable. If something's forgettable, it was just kind of very boring or average and you just don't remember it. It's just gone from your memory. There was nothing good or bad about it to make you remember it. Okay, that is the end of this report on Tony's career. We're now going to have a talk kind of about retirement in our For You Chat question. Let's go there now.
For You Chat.
So the question is, do you know anyone who has retired? What do they do with their time now?
Well, I guess the person I know the most is my mom.
Right.
She's retired.
Both my parents as well.
Yeah, she was a university teacher and went
My
on
mum
to do private training, private instruction. So now she's retired. What does she do? Well, what do people do now in North America? Not much. They stay home because of COVID.
Yes.
But her life hasn't changed too much because she likes to stay home. She likes to read. She goes for nice walks on the beach. Things like that, and of course spends time with my sister and other family members and her friends too. So she just kind of, enjoys her free time.
Yeah, my parents are both retired. They do a lot of grandparenting of my brother's two children. They are quite busy as active grandparents, looking after the kids to give my brother some time off, that kind of thing. But otherwise, they do a lot of walks. When they can, they travel a lot. When COVID's done, they'll come out here and see me. They'll travel to nice places, that kind of thing. But otherwise, my mum does and my dad does. They do a lot of gardening. There are fruit trees in their garden that they will turn into stuff, that sort of thing. Generally, they take it pretty easy. Yeah, my dad does a lot of reading. They will just go out for walks and just sort of enjoy going to places and seeing people, really.
And not working. They enjoy not working.
They enjoy not working. I think my dad, before COVID, he would go and, he was a doctor, so he'd go and check people out to see if they're crazy or if they need kind of mental help. So he found that sort of interesting after retirement. But now they're just basically at home doing grandparent stuff.
Oh, that's good.
That is pretty good for them.
They've earned the right to do that.
But that's all the time we have right now. Thanks for watching, guys. For English For You, I'm Pat.
And I'm Mike.
Talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Vocabulary Review.
Graduate. After Bob graduated from high school, he took a trip to Europe before starting college. Politics. Bernie chose to go into politics because he wanted to help change laws to be fairer. Colleague. My colleagues and I have a meeting about once a month to discuss changes to our department. Regret. I regret not seeing the Van Gogh Museum when I was in the Netherlands, but I just didn't have time. Refer to. George sometimes refers to his brother, but I didn't know until now that his name is Bruce. Unforgettable. Seeing the Eiffel Tower was an unforgettable experience, and I can't wait to go to Paris again.
智慧小补帖
Journalism. sentimental, teleprompter.
以上节目是由活用空中美语制作，活用空中美语杂志，请洽询全国各大书店。如欲索取试听教材，请来电02-2364-4000 02-2364-4000，或上网查询，网址是 www.english4u.net www.english4u.net